Ball still in play. Oh, what a goal! What a magnificent, absolutely stupendous strike from Kevin Kurani. Borovic through to Raul. Lovely chip by Raul. 4-1 Schalke.
Blau und weiß sein Leben lang. Hallo meine Leute, wie geht's? Willkommen zum das einzige Schalke Podcast auf Englisch. That's right, folks. Officially the only English-speaking podcast worldwide. This is episode 96 of SchalkeMerica. Schalke fans are some of the greatest fans in the world, many of whom speak English. This pod aims to bring you the latest from the Royal Blues, talk to English-speaking fans of the club, get their point of view across, and bring you game highlights. I'm your host, Richard Carmen, and as always, joining me on the show is co-host Jack Mangan. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right. Quite a bit to talk about. I'm so glad that we postponed our podcast from Monday until tonight, which was definitely because we had inside information on what was going on and not because I was under the weather at all.
And it'll allow time for this to come in too. Look at that. Hey,
that's true. Got to plug that merch right at the top. Why don't you talk about that for a sec?
Yeah. So we obviously have been. Well, at least I've been donning some Schalke gear. I got the jersey. I got the hooded sweatshirt here around here somewhere. But a lot of people are asking about it, and asking whether we're gonna have merchandise or not. And we actually are selling some of our merchandise now. It's really easy to get to. Go to teespring.com/SchalkeMerica. You'll find it there as teespring.com/SchalkeMerica. We got all kinds of stuff there. There's some free Katuchu stuff in there, some other stuff that if you're not for the movement, this is just the beginning. We'll get more to come. Jack, there's some leggings in there if you like as well, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
But yeah, that's it. And so here's the mug, and we got some more gear coming around, and definitely check it out. Support the podcast. So how are you?
I'm doing well. Just trying to wrap my head around everything that's kind of transpired in the last 24 to 48 hours or so, because there's quite a lot of moving pieces, both organizationally and then also in terms of the players on the field and everything. So quite a lot to get to.
Yeah, we're gonna spend the whole podcast talking about the Freiburg. No, I'm just kidding. We're not at all. We're not. We'll talk briefly about that. But we got some other things at the club that are a little bit more pressing to talk about. So that's gonna dominate the headlines of our show tonight. But let's get that freaking Freiburg match out of the way, Jack. Not a pretty game at all. 4-0 we lose. Goals in the first half from Waldschmidt in the 20th, and then Schmidt in the 38th. Made it 2-0 at halftime. And then coming out of the break in the 46th minute, Holler gets one. And then in the 57th minute, Waldschmidt again with his brace makes it 4-0. We were utterly incompetent in that match. Not much to talk about. The players who started in this game, the lineup was Nubel, started off with Timo Becker, Ozan Kabak, Bastian Oczipka, Juan Miranda, midfield of Alexander Schoff, Weston McKennie, Daniel Caligiuri, and our man Chan Bazduan. And then up top, you had Katuchu and Matando. Man, we also had some appearances by Rahman, Bujala, Malik Tiao, but it didn't matter who was in there. It was not a pretty picture. Freiburg just embarrassed us.
Yeah, they did. It's another, 0-4 for us, unfortunately. Thank goodness Hoffenheim rather unexpectedly did the same thing to Dortmund as well, just so at least they were in the same boat. I think, did Kramaric have all 4 goals in that one?
I think
it was something nuts. Yeah, anyway, I was disappointed in the result against Freiburg just because been a dismal second half, as we are all well aware. And you would hope that there would at least be some sort of reaction at the very end to give the fans something to hold on to as we head into the summer break. It's hard to blame them for that not transpiring. I think everyone was kind of wanting to finish this up as soon as possible and get on to summer vacation and everything. But disappointing, especially so because it wasn't even as if Wagner came out and played exclusively young kids. There's a lot of players in that starting 11, at least at the beginning of the match, that have featured for us all season long. So in that sense, the result was even more disappointing. I actually don't think we looked bad going forward in this one. We were bad at the back, obviously, but I thought we were okay going forward. We just couldn't convert for whatever reason. If you look at the shot statistics, they're actually fairly similar to what Freiburg accomplished. Just, they were far more efficient than we were, and obviously we weren't able to convert anything. So, disappointing way to close out a disappointing second half of the season. And with that result, officially 16 games winless. As we've said, we beat Gladbach to start the Rückrunde, and that was the last victory, at least in Bundesliga play, that we had for the rest of the season. Definitely didn't expect that after the Gladbach match. We were feeling pretty good about things, and just didn't work out that way, unfortunately. But time for the club to really take a hard look at itself in the mirror and try to find a way to, I don't even know if you can say improve on this performance next season, just because of the situation we're going to be in. It's going to be hard to potentially even maintain this level of performance, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and it's so much to get into, and let's do this baby steps. First things first, with the performance, many questioned. And we've heard from Schneider before that, hey, Wagner's my guy. We're going to continue with him going to next season. We saw that performance, and many people were wondering, would Wagner make it through, remain as manager? All that whilst the Tony Raus chants kept growing louder and louder and louder, and then, luckily, maybe we had insider information. I'm not going to comment on that, but we delayed our podcast, and then the news broke on Monday. Toennies is out. And who is to replace him? Many wondered, because there was really no statement at first. This guy, Jens Buchta, he was the deputy director, just underneath Toennies. And so many people are wondering who the heck is he? And so
Dr. Jens Buchta, mind you.
Pardon me, Dr. Jens Buchta. So many people wonder who he is. Not too many people are familiar with him, at least here, at least stateside, or this side of the pond, I should say. He's been with the club since 2006. He's a lawyer, if that helps anything. It's been said that the club's not been very transparent through the years, and it seems like mostly it's been Toennies and Lang. Let me get his name. I can't remember his first name. Just slipped my mind. Anyway, those two are the ones making all the decisions, and then they would occasionally refer to Buchta to make all the drastic decisions. But he's a 57-year-old. He's a lawyer. Has experience in I think it was like commercial law. So he knows the business side of things and how to handle a crisis. That's what it is. I mean, he works for a bank, a firm, I should say. So he kind of knows how to get through these kind of things. I guess that's a good thing for us. Many people wondered. Not many people have really heard of him, really. And I mean, what are your thoughts when you heard a name? I mean, obviously, it took probably a couple hours before the name came out, but the board unanimously voted for him. He was a deputy director, and there's going to be another vote in July for a bunch of people are leaving. So what are your thoughts on all this mess?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I'm not particularly familiar with him either, just because I'm not probably as tuned in as I should be to all the individuals who are actually running the club. But yeah, been a member of the supervisory board since 2006, I believe, became deputy chairman in 2012. And so to that end, I mean, if the motivation behind Toennies was simply that he just doesn't represent the values of the club, we need to get him out specifically, then fine. If it was more in the sense that there needs to be larger institutional change, then maybe some people aren't going to be particularly happy about the vice chairman just stepping into that role. You're getting rid of Clemens Toennies and you're putting in essentially his VP. It's not maybe the kind of drastic change in direction that some people would have wanted, but obviously I can't speak to that as well as I'd like to, just because I don't know a whole lot about him in general. But yeah, a big move and something that maybe read the statement from the Ultras on the last podcast, strong words from them. There were kind of demonstrations and protests and signs hung up around the area.
A chain of 1,500 people outside the stadium before the match protesting Toennies. So
yeah, not insignificant. I mean, that's a small percentage of the overall membership, but that's still a decent number of people. And it's clear that pressure just got too great and they had to make that move. So to everybody who wanted that, congratulations, you've won that fight, and now hopefully what's going on, Ivaki, as we see the comment from one of our listeners and Twitter followers. It's a good thing in the sense that to the extent that we thought that people in charge weren't living up to our values and weren't running the club properly, some change has been made. But in terms of a clear plan of action, a lot of that still kind of remains to be seen at this point.
And many question, we'll get to some of the comments and questions here because that's going to dominate most of this podcast. We're questioning, if you just got through to Toennies, what does it do anything? You still have the rest of the supervisory board. We're pretty much on the same page with him. And so it depends on how you fall on this. We're not going to say one way or the other. It's just, we don't want to comment on something we're not fully aware of and don't have all the details for. But what I do want to say is moving on is it wasn't only Toennies out and Bukta in was dominating the headlines. There's obviously the whole Schalke had a big meeting with Alexander Jobs was there, Schneider, as was Wagner, and so they all had something to say. Here's a picture of Alexander Jobs, and he said part of what this. I'll give you a synopsis of what he said in this press conference. Was it today? I guess it was. He talked about the resignation of Toennies and how the board feel, and basically what he said was he didn't want to leave. Didn't want to throw people under the bus or anything. He just said it was a pretty standard business, and we regret that he has left, but it's a unanimous decision, blah, 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 blah. He also talked about the club's image over the past few weeks. And really, it's been the past several months, honestly, since the whole racist comment that Toennies made back in August it was. And then over the last few weeks, it certainly hasn't gotten any better with the whole coronavirus outbreak in one of Toennies' plant. The official statement that the reason why he's leaving is because he wants to focus on his business to make sure that they get out of the crisis they're at. But we know the real reason. So there's that. Alexander Job also talked about transparency. We just talked about a few minutes ago, back when drastic decisions had to be made, it was just three guys, Bukta, Toennies, and Lang, who made all the decision and wasn't really involved in the supervisory board fully, and definitely not the fans weren't involved in any of that stuff. So Alexander Jobs talked about how, there's no trust in the hierarchy of Schalke at the moment, and he really wants to rebuild that trust. And part of how you can do that is being transparent with the club, with the fans, and anytime any kind of decision is going to be made or a restructure, they're going to let the fans know so that everyone's so they understand what's going on, and we're not doing anything in secrecy. So I agree 100% with that. He also talked about the structure of the club. He said that with this whole coronavirus thing, it really gave Schalke an opportunity to restructure the club. Maybe put a quote unquote salary cap on the club with not giving players more than €2.5 million, I think a year, I guess it is. And that means a wage cut and means losing some players, which we'll get to later. But yeah, he said that, they're going to focus on the youth. And some of that I agree with, the salary cap portion. I'm not sure. No team in the Bundesliga does that. So we're going to be the first to do that. If you're to believe what he says. And lastly, he talked about the financial situation of the club and how dire it was or is. And we weren't exactly sure what the exact numbers were. But what we found out was that before this whole pandemic, mind you, we were 197 million euros in debt. That's ridiculous. We were spending more than money we're making. And then after all this coronavirus stuff, we're now at 225 million euros in the hole, or maybe 250 now. I lost track. We're deep in the hole, and we have to figure ways how to get that money back. And that could mean, selling players or anything, but, based on what Jobst was saying in the conference, what are your thoughts on all that?
The transparency point, I think, is a big one, and something that will certainly help to repair goodwill between the fan base and the organizational higher ups if it's followed through on. Because at the end of the day, that's mostly all we can ask for to some extent, is just that, they're being honest with us and being forthright about the situation we're in, and are involving fans in the decisions to the extent that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, if Tony said he was leaving because he needs to go focus on, his other businesses, that's kind of a BS excuse. We all know that's not the case. And if it is, it's a strange reason to leave now anyway. But I don't know. I mean, I struggle with this just because I feel like until we actually see more substantive action put into place, it's hard to kind of judge anything based on what they're saying at the moment.
Yeah.
The salary cap thing, I've actually seen some people come out in support of that, thinking that's a positive change. I'd have to do some more thought about that in terms of how I feel about it.
It's positive in balancing the books for sure.
Sure. It's just, and that's, maybe we need to be realistic about the situation we're in, that we're not the team we used to be.
Yeah.
We're probably not going to be in Europe anytime soon. And so we kind of need to put that behind us. But from the perspective of a club that kind of feels like it should be fighting for Europe, it's going to be hard to attract the kind of talent necessary to get the results to qualify if you have a salary cap and can't pay some larger numbers on the books to bring people in that can really make a difference in your squad. Not saying it can't be done. It's not unheard of to have a salary cap. I might be making this up, but I thought Leipzig at some point had something similar. Maybe not right now, but at some point.
I know they had a policy of not signing anyone over 23. I knew that one, but there may have been a salary cap too thing for all I know. I could
be making that up, but yeah, it is an odd move. It's an odd move for a club of Schalke's stature. But I mean, if that's what needs to happen, that's what needs to happen. I think part of the problem with this whole financial breakdown of the club is partially the context that it takes place in, right? Because Gelsenkirchen, that whole area is more of a blue collar area as it is, and so the mismanagement of that kind of wealth, like millions and millions of dollars, I think is kind of even more of a slap to the face of the fans than it otherwise would be if it was in a more, white collar area. But, the very widely and, well-known values that are expressed to the club of, of hard work and all that kind of stuff, it sort of flies in the face of that, even more, and it kind of makes it sting that much more. So, hopefully they can get this under control and make some changes to the way they're running their business and try to live within their means a little bit more. And I guess, like I said, we'll have to wait and see it. Because, I mean, is the salary cap even official yet, or are they just talking about that?
They were just talking about it in the press conference. And, part of the restructuring or chance to restructure the club that Jobs was talking about, he even said in the conference, and Schneider did as well, that, they're going to have to probably sell some players to cut some wages. And they admitted that, having a team that's that can compete to get to Europe is going to be very unlikely over the next couple seasons, because they're gonna have to use the Knappenschmiede. They're gonna have to use free transfers and low wage players, and for a few years until the books get balanced and whatnot. Then maybe we can start spending some money again. But he even said it outright, and so did Schneider. So it's something we're gonna have to we've already embraced it for the last couple of years. We had no choice. Probably a couple more years of this, I think, is going to be in the books.
Yeah, I think we need to completely forget about Europe for the time being. I think the focus isn't whether or not we can achieve a European qualification spot. It's more whether or not we can avoid a relegation spot. Which I'm not trying to be doom and gloom and overly dramatic about it. It's just that, going into this season, I think I projected that Schalke would finish 10th. I think we ultimately finished 12th, if I'm correct. So even looking at the squad that we had preseason, I didn't think it was particularly good. And it looks like it is probably more likely to take a turn for the worse than for the better next season. We'll see. Maybe Schneider can pull off some moves that really make a lot of sense in good business, and we get good value players in that can compete. But so much of the transfer strategy that we've seen in recent years is trying to acquire promising but cheap players from the Zweite Bundesliga or elsewhere. And more often than not, these players don't pan out, or at least aren't performing to the level that a club like Schalke would like them to get into the Champions League or Europa League spots. And that kind of transfer strategy seems likely to continue, just because as we said, we potentially have this salary cap now. We don't have the money to go out and get big names anyway. Maybe some of that will change if we unload a couple players and bring in some money, although I would assume that some of that money would probably be used, not just for squad planning, but to help the club get out of the financial situation that it's in. So it's not as if we sell Weston McKennie or something, which is one of the rumors that was going around today. Apparently there's Hertha Berlin interest, although I doubt that he would make a move like that. I find it very hard to believe that McKennie would want to make that move. I think he's probably going to want to go to the Premier League or take a step up rather than a horizontal move like Hertha Berlin. But so even if we were to sell him for, $20 million, $30 million, whatever it would be, I can't imagine that 100% of that is going to be used and re-injected back into the squad. It's going to be siphoned off elsewhere, probably. So in that sense, our prospects, don't look good, but we all just kind of have to be aware of that and know what we're in for next couple of seasons, and kind of accept reality and just prepare for what that could look like. So.
Yeah. And before I get to some of the comments here on YouTube, part of it was, in the past when we've gone into financial trouble, we reached out to Toennies to give us some money But now he's not here. What do we do? Well, we did get an injection from the one of the local jurisdictions, the local state was willing to give 40 million euros to help with the financial situation. There are some rumors that they would only give it to it if Toennies left. There's no truth to that. This is stuff that I've heard. I don't know if you heard it either, but that was pretty interesting to me. But
yeah, that was a huge story that the actual state of North Rhine-Westphalia had to get involved in order to guarantee the loan, because Schalke potentially isn't creditworthy enough to acquire that kind of loan on their own, and so the state had to step in and say, if Schalke is unable to pay it back, we'll accept the responsibility for some percentage of that initial loan. It's an embarrassing position to be in.
It is.
Not only that we have to get a loan in the first place, but that we can't even get it on our own without a co-signer of that magnitude stepping in. It's pretty shocking that a club like Schalke that consistently generates significant revenue has to do that. So not a good look. But
the one positive side, I guess you would say, is that Jobs did say that the sponsorships that we've had are fully committed with us, and they're not going to be parting ways with us. And so at least that stability is still there. So I guess that there's that in terms of trying to pay back the debts. We have that kind of money, but
even the sausage one.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So our first comment on YouTube from Avakai, he says, hopefully we'll see some real change after the board meeting. Still have very little confidence in the FO with Schneider backing Wagner. And we kind of talked about that last podcast, how Schneider is really putting all his cards on the guy he signed. And it would make him look bad if he had fired him now. So
yeah. So that thing for me was, it's one thing for him to just back Wagner in general, but it was how prematurely he backed him that I think raised the eyebrow for me, because he announced that he intended to keep Wagner as manager like a month ago at least, or more. Yeah. I mean, like right when the restart basically kicked off. And so to come out that far in front of it and just say, hey, this isn't a thing, we're keeping him, I thought was curious. But then especially after the way the season went, and as I've said on previous podcasts, I'm conflicted about this because on the one hand, I do believe that Schalke need to find a way to get off the coaching carousel to build some continuity season to season if we're actually going to, build anything here. But to the other extent, it's what serious club keeps a manager in place who had a 16-game winless streak? It's like the worst Rick Rundin club history practically, if not actually.
I think it is.
And what kind of message does that send to retain him? So, and yeah, I don't know who we'd be able to bring in place if we'd even be able to get a better manager than that. But it's just at some point saying, that's okay, and it was only because of injuries or because of a lack of squad depth or whatever. Well, isn't that your job, Schneider, to provide that for them? I'm conflicted about the whole thing. I'm not particularly excited about Wagner staying on. I wouldn't revel in him losing his job because, as we've said, these are all real people, and I'm not going to root for someone to lose their livelihood. But
right.
Especially for a club of Schalke's stature to say, hey, that run of performances, that's fine, we'll just go again next year, is surprising, and to me reeks of potentially Schneider defending him because he was his hire. Because he got rid of Tedesco and brought Wagner in, it's Schneider's hire. He feels like it reflects poorly on him if he gets rid of him. I'll tell you what would reflect more poorly on him, keeping Wagner and having things go the same way next season. That's going to reflect even more poorly on Schneider. So hopefully that doesn't happen, and hopefully this decision proves to be the correct one, staying with Wagner and putting faith in him for next year. But we'll see.
And we'll get to Wagner here momentarily, but what was more odd to you? The comment that Schneider made like a month too premature about Wagner is his guy, or Wagner being premature with saying Schubert's his guy, and there's no controversy. They're both very odd. During that first one was early in the season. This one, obviously, they're about equal.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the goalkeeper thing was just so weird because when he came out and backed him. I think on the podcast I came on and said, why would you do that?
Yeah, exactly.
Because now you're just putting yourself in a position to, and then he ended up going back on it anyway and put new bullets. So he just looks silly at that point. Like you don't need to make guarantees like that. And if you are going to make guarantees like that, then you need to follow through on them.
All right. Reach Stubby's commenting. He says, good for Schalke for letting the team get canceled for the play on the field rather than the comments from the front office. Yeah. Sentiments exactly. We said that we were going to talk about Wagner, and we are. There's that good-looking mug of his. So he spoke at the conference as well. He said he was going to come out with his analysis of the season And so his analysis was as such. He says that basically there are two teams this season, one in the Hinrunde, one in the Rückrunde. One was pre-injury, one was post-injury. So he blamed a lot of it that, said when all our players are there and healthy, the team played very well. They did what he asked them. We finished we were in like 5th place at the Winterpause. And then after the 2 Berlin matches, the DFB Pokal and in the Rückrunde, after that things kind of just fell apart. Injuries started mounting like crazy, and he said something to the effect of, if it wasn't for these injuries, then we would have had a good season or something like that. You caught that, didn't you, Jack, from the press conference?
Well, there's not 2 teams. There's one team.
Exactly.
And the players that aren't starting in the first half of the season are part of that team. They're not a separate team. They're part of that team. And yeah, he was giving this line out consistently throughout the season, as the results continued to come in negatively. And I have a certain amount of sympathy for that argument because he is right in the sense that I do think Schalke have suffered an inordinate number of injuries this season and maybe even in the past couple of seasons that have, put us in a difficult position. But, what team goes throughout an entire Bundesliga campaign without suffering injuries for a significant length of time? That's part of football. That's part of sports in general. To say, hey, yeah, I'm the right guy for this team, assuming all of my players are healthy, is not an acceptable answer in my opinion. Does the loss of Mascarell and Harit and Serdar affect our play? Of course, because those are 3 starting midfielders. Like, I'm not trying to say it doesn't have an effect, but I don't think that suddenly means that, 1 win in 17 matches in the second half of the season is the logical result of those injuries. That's not good enough. And for a team like Schalke that has, the Knappenschmiede to fall back on, and you would think potentially has more resources of depth than other clubs, it's especially troublesome that happened and that we're kind of having it viewed that way. So yeah, I disagree with those comments, and I think I hope Wagner will also take a look at what he was doing in his style of play and what he was asking of his players and reflect on that over the summer and see if maybe he can change some of those things as well.
Well, the disagreement would not stop there, I think. Well, at least for me, I don't know about you, but the next point he brought up was the lack of competition due to injury problems. He said he's basically blaming that because of the injury problems, there was lack of competition, and thus the guys didn't play as well as they should have, and even the guys who were there, even the veterans that were there, weren't trying as hard. I call BS on that. I'm sorry. That's not a good enough excuse. They're professionals. They should be playing good no matter what. Yeah, competition helps things, but if injuries hurt, we understand that. But they're saying that it's a lack of competition and that's the reason. No, it's not a reason for me. These guys are veterans, and if they can't do the job, find someone else who can. Sit them. If they're not doing what they're supposed to do, sit them. Yeah, the players we didn't have that many players of choice. I get that. Our depth wasn't that great at all. But that's a poor excuse in my book. I mean, I don't know how you feel on that, but I heard that and I was like, I was ready to throw something.
Same answer to the last point to some extent. I have a certain amount of sympathy for that because I think logically that makes some small amount of sense. That by virtue of people not being available to take a spot from you, your motivation for that might dip ever so slightly, but right. I don't think that results in the kind of dip in performance overall that we're talking about here. And as a manager, it's your job to make sure your players are working hard and are up for it every week and are putting in their best. And if you can't get them to do that, and occasionally you're going to have some bad apples that are just uncoachable and you need to get rid of them. But if that's a significant portion of your team, that's on you. That's not on them. Or that's more of a symptom of larger organizational rot or culture issues. I don't think we saw the number of players go AWOL that we did last season, as things were falling apart under Tedesco. It seemed like the club was slightly more stable in that regard, or perhaps the club was just better at keeping a lid on things from a PR perspective. Maybe some of that stuff was going on internally. It certainly seemed like it was better. But yeah, once again, I just don't find that to be a valid excuse. And so far, the first 2 points that you're bringing up of David Wagner's season analysis, where is the personal responsibility in either of those answers? There isn't any. And that's troubling. I think he has valid points to some extent, but I would be much more willing to take those into consideration if he was pairing those with personal critiques and more self-reflection is what I would say.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I was trying to look for the quote that he ended the whole thing on, but part of it was he said, the injuries has been a problem for us, not just this season. It's been the past few seasons, and part of the way they're trying to remedy that I do agree with is we've been screaming for this on the podcast is maybe it's time to get new trainers and new medic team and new backroom staff that can help with these injuries, because clearly the people we have there now are not, and they're probably great people, but they're not keeping the players on the pitch.
It seems like they're all on loan from Arsenal.
God, that doesn't help anything.
Yeah, do we have some sort of like unknown connection with them? I mean, what is going on I agree. It's been an issue, and there's a certain amount of that you can chalk up to bad luck, but over the course of a couple of seasons, if that's a consistent trend, then maybe you need to make changes there as well. Once again, I'm not saying fire everybody. Like I don't want that to happen. I don't root for people to lose their jobs, but you just can't keep a lot of the same things in place and keep rolling it out season after season and seeing the same results.
Yeah. And then the last point that he made was we were forced to use a lot of the Knappensspiele this year. And that's a good thing, I think, because we've been clamoring to tap into that system and bring up some players, give them some game time, whether, it's your team is doing well and you just want to give them a couple of minutes here and there, or if you're forced to do like we were doing. I think that ultimately was a good thing, and I think he said the same thing. We have a great youth system, great youth academy, and we got an opportunity to use them and give the players valuable experience. Chaz Bazduan, obviously Katucha's a graduate from there, and some other youngsters, Bujalev as well. And we're probably gonna see more. Obviously Timo Becker and a couple other guys we saw. That I did agree with. I mean, I like that exactly. You should be using your youth academy, especially one as acclaimed as Schalke. Use what you got, use that youth system and build them up. That's what we've done in the past, right? We build up. That's what Draxler and Sane and all those guys came through the club, and then we eventually moved on. That's how we should be doing it. And at least he did that and didn't stick with all of the older guys, I guess I should say.
Yeah, that's a fair point. To the extent that we were forced, to play more of these guys than we optimally would have liked to, it does seem likely that we might have to do the same thing next season. And so it's better to have had those guys get a number of matches under their belt now, as opposed to jumping in cold next season with a blank slate and the potential for things to go south further. Because, keep in mind, we had this buffer of a good first half of the season that was kind of keeping us afloat despite the results in the second half. If we come out next season and start the same way that we ended, we're going to be in trouble real quick. So, yeah, I do think it's a good thing. Not ideal that we had to do that, but it could ultimately prove to be useful that happened, and that number of players got significant minutes. Quick question for you while we're on that subject.
Yeah.
Who of the recent promotions from the youth setup did you think was the most impressive for us this season?
Of the recent call-ups this season?
Yeah.
I'm gonna, we had it's a very small sample size, but I think Chan Bazduan, composure on the ball. I would agree. Being able to affect the game, immediately. Within the first few seconds of his debut, right? I thought he looked very promising. Yeah, Malik Tia, probably going to eventually be very good, and some of the other guys, but they all look still very raw. Chan Bazduan looks the most capable of being in a starting 11 as opposed to the other guys, to me.
Oh yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. I thought he was very impressive, particularly his skills on the ball. He's somebody that when he's in possession, you just don't expect him to take an errant touch or anything. He seems to be able to avoid trouble pretty easily. Yeah, he reminds me of Harit in some sense in terms of those on the ball skills, and I thought that was really promising going forward. I'm excited to see more of him.
I am as well. And Wagner ended his portion of the conference saying, with a lot of intensity, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of courage, a lot of cohesion. We have seen for a very long time that when we do these things, the team looks promising. He emphasized, if we have our team together, we will get there again. I am fully confident of that, or have full confidence in that. So he's backing himself. He understands that they had some issues this past season, and they need to build on that, obviously. But he seems to have. He thinks, at least the way he says it, he has a plan for next season, and using the youngsters and what we have at our disposal, and hopefully keeping these guys fit with the new backroom staff can go a long way, and hopefully the results from the Hinrunde come back and not the repeat of the Rückrunde.
Yeah.
So. All right, so before we get some of the players, here's some of the comments that we had from Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff from people. So one of the first ones, Aman Ayman Balomi, he says, and I butcher your name, I apologize. He says, can you talk more about the new chairman? And we kind of did to the best of our knowledge, because we don't really know him as well as Toennies. But he's been with the club for a while. He's been deputy director for a while, and deputy chairman, excuse me. And he has seemed to have experience business wise in terms of how to dealing with crises. And so maybe it's what we need at the moment. But it's a wait and see type thing. I'm gonna let people who have more familiarity with him and the supervisory board members to speak on that than I will speak on. And if you're out there and you want to be on the podcast and talk about it, hey, we welcome you on. So how about you?
Yeah, we certainly do not claim to be all knowing or as tuned into certain aspects of the club that other people, particularly those who are on the ground over there, are. So forgive us for that if we can't provide any insight or analysis on something specifically that you'd like to see us talk about. We'll try to get better about that, obviously. But I need to learn how to speak and read German better. That would be tremendously helpful for me in covering some of the things that are in German outlets over there.
Yeah. And you had a conversation with somebody on Twitter about that, and they asked you, "Oh, did you read that in German? Was it
It was Karsten.
Yeah, Karsten. Yeah, good friend Karsten. Yeah. So I
retweeted his postseason analysis.
Yes,
which I thought there's a couple of things I disagree with in there, but I thought overall it was well reasoned, and he had some really interesting data viz in there as well, with some stats stuff, and that's the kind of stuff that you probably don't get from us as often as some of you would like. So if you're interested in some of those more nitty gritty details, data wise, I would definitely recommend going and taking a look at that. And Abel put something together. Abel Mazarosh put something together as well. I think it was titled something along the lines of "Why is Schalke so bad?" Which
what is Schalke soccer?
I feel bad sharing that, but I'll go back and retweet that one as well.
Had some great points in it.
It does. Yeah, he's really good, obviously. So.
Next comment is from Hans Hanan. He says, "Who's going to replace Toennies?" We talked about Dr. Jens Buchta. Also, is Wagner right now in danger? And I don't think so. And Schneider's come out and said, I got his backing. Obviously, if he starts the season 0-5, it's not going to do well for him. But I don't think he's in danger at the moment. Even if we get a new chairman or the whole new supervisory board come July, I think he's safe for now. And then what's your dream coach that would be suitable for Schalke? Dream coach? I'll let you go first.
Tedesco. No, I'm just kidding. There's a lot of people that would say that. They want Tedesco. No. Yeah, we need to have a manager by committee. Schalke Twitter just takes over the club. That'd be a disaster, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
We all like to think that we know so much, and I'm sure we would get into a training session and be completely out of our depth. I don't know. I mean, instead of Diet Klopp, how about actual Klopp?
Yeah.
Or that would ever happen realistically.
Thomas Tuchel?
Tuchel's a psychopath, dude. I don't want him on my team.
Everyone says that too. Yeah.
He's a sociopath, man. Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know who would be good.
I don't have a dream coach. There's not one name that I consistently am like, I would love to see him come to Schalke, and there's not one guy that I focus on and think like this is the solution to all of our problems.
For all those fans that said, we should just go to the Zweite Bundesliga and work our way back. We thought we got embarrassed on the last match day. That last match day in the Zweite Bundesliga was crazy, with Heidenheim holding the playoff position. All they had to do is win, and they're in. They got blown out 3-0. Hamburg was below them. All they had to do is win and hope that No,
I think Hamburg needed a draw.
Yeah,
I could have been wrong about
that. Yeah. And they lost what, 5-1, 4-1,
5-1.
I mean,
you feel bad for Hamburg fans. I mean,
yeah, I feel good for Heidenheim. I mean, I've liked their coach Schmidt for a long time. There's actually a great documentary for German fans, or for any fan really of the Bundesliga and German soccer in general, called Trainers. Is on Netflix for a while. It may still be, but this is from like 5 years ago. And Frank Schmidt was still the manager of Heidenheim, and they were a third division club at the time. And when you watch it, you really fall in love with this manager. You think he knows. He's like a Klopp type kind of guy, where he gets his team to believe in him. He has offensive tactic minded game plans, and it's hard not to like the guy. But good for him. But if you go to fight the Bundesliga, how many former Bundesliga clubs are down there? They can't get out.
Exactly.
Difficultly.
Thankfully, we haven't seen a lot of that take. But I have seen that a couple times, and I think the message I would try to send to the people that think that might be a good idea is you are dramatically underestimating how difficult it is to gain promotion. back out of there, especially given the financial situation we're in. The last thing we need is to go down and lose the revenue that we have from being in the Bundesliga in the first place. I don't think that would solve much of anything. We need to avoid that at all costs, in my opinion.
All right, next comment is from, and if I butcher your name again, I apologize. This is a local guy. He's got near me, Jacob Skaronik. He's a new fan as of the restart. So he says, as a new fan who joined during the restart, what are the narratives to follow? Players to be excited for besides the Frika Tucci movement? You can't really see it there. And expectations for the offseason and next season.
Well, first of all, I apologize that you became a fan of Schalke at this moment. It's an unfortunate time to make that decision, but welcome aboard. In terms of, the promising players that we have at the moment,
Chan Bosdowan.
Yeah, Bosdowan is one. Katuchu is another. And I know there's some fatigue out there about the number of times we brought him up over the course of the season. I would remind you that once again, he only achieved his first start against Leverkusen.
Yeah.
So it's still very recent that he was even given that opportunity. So Becker at times has been interesting just because of his versatility, and he puts in a shift.
Friend of the show, Nick Teitig.
We didn't even talk about that. We have to wait for that. We'll have to wait for that episode to come out. But I would love to see him potentially get an opportunity. He's just had so many injury troubles over the last couple of years.
And not to deviate real quick, but two things up top. We didn't mention at the top of this telecast because if you're watching on YouTube, you're not going to catch this portion. But if you're watching the podcast, you'll hear it. James Thorogood. First off, kudos for mentioning SchalkeMerica podcast on the air. We thank you so much for that, sir. And then Daniel Caligieri, who with the words of welcoming us into the podcast. Yeah, we'll get to him, but he's departing, unfortunately. So,
friend of the podcast, James Thorogood, who has been on at one point, first person to actually drop the hashtag Freakatuchu, and then also the first person to mention the podcast directly. So we appreciate that. That definitely made my weekend, despite the bad result. That was pretty cool. So, and also I think he
scored shortly after that.
Yeah, right. I think he's underrated as a commentator myself, and especially because I don't think he even had a color guy with him, and so he had to carry that entire broadcast solo, which is not an easy thing to do. No. And he did a pretty good job with that. So shout out to him.
Yeah. But go back to the players. Some of the players, Timo Becker, obviously looks like he can be good. We had Carl's before, but we sold him, I believe, to
Carl's Jr.
Carl's Jr. That's right. We sold him to Bremen. I believe it was Bremen anyway. Who else? Malik Tial. He's supposed to be Joel Matip 2.0. We haven't seen him enough to make a judgment on that. There's a bunch of youngsters though down there in the Knappenschmiede that we got our eyes on. We talked about it briefly. We still need to get some. I think Aiden in here or somebody to talk about Knappenschmiede. Devote a podcast to them because there's a lot of good young talented players there. But there's a lot of promising players in the Knappenschmiede to look forward to, and even some guys. I'm curious to see what Bujaleb. We'll talk about Bujaleb here in a minute, but it's a lot of players to keep your eye on. All right, let's see. Next question. We already kind of answered this. Do we already have candidates for the role occupied by Toennies? Yes, Dr. Jens Buchta. Schalke Canada, our friends up north, they said this is their tweet to us. We just want to say thank you for you guys' dedication. Thank you for another great season of podcasts and breaking down the season game by game for us. It's been awesome to watch and listen to you guys and grow as a voice to our team. Have a great summer. Hashtag Freakatuchu. Thank you.
Far too kind from them, but glad to see our neighbors to the north. Where are they based? Are they based out of Toronto?
I want to say, actually, I thought that was Toronto. I want to say it's like Winnipeg or something.
But anyway, we love seeing
either way
new fan clubs and new organizations.
Happy Canada Day. Happy Canada Day.
That is true. Pop up across the U.S. and North America in general. That always makes us happy when we see a new cluster pop up. So glad to have them be part of the conversation on Twitter and everything. And it's been great to have them on board this season.
Well, we got another question up here on YouTube. Let's just switch things for a little bit here. Our buddy Jake says, with Bournemouth, most likely being relegated, I wouldn't mind seeing Eddie Howe taking over the manager spot. Eddie Howe has been known to do things with very little. And he's done very good things at Bournemouth. Bournemouth is a very
sounds like Wagner.
It does, but he finished higher than Wagner did in the Premier League and for a lot longer. I've always liked Eddie Howe, and as someone I do know as opposed to David Wagner before he came to Schalke. What are your thoughts on Howe?
I mean, if Bournemouth gets relegated, do you actually expect Eddie Howe to lose his job?
No, but I think maybe some other teams might come calling.
I mean, maybe he's going to say, hey, it's time to look for a new opportunity and it's time for somebody else to take over here. But, this is a former player of the club who became the manager. I mean, he's very much a Bournemouth guy through and through.
He's like Frank Schmidt of Heidenheim. They're just with that club. They're indebted to them.
Yeah. I mean, he's been there for a long time in various positions and has seen them through this recent period of success. I would be surprised if they parted ways with him that quickly. I mean, but I'm not tuned into what's going on over there. Yeah, no, I mean, I have a generally positive opinion of Eddie Howe, but I just thought it was funny that the things that you mentioned about him just now are the things that we were saying about David Wagner before taking over, which doesn't mean that it wouldn't potentially work out. It's just, I don't know if you make that move just to make that move.
Well, we go from our friends up north to our friends out west in Arizona. Brad Denny, he says, one battle over, that the season's gone. I'm ready for the next, and that's all the off-season worry. He posted a nice picture of him trying to fight off a whole army of off-season worry. So I think we're all in the same boat. We have no idea what's going on. We heard the press conference today, and we still don't know what's going to go on. We've heard rumors of a potential salary cap of €2.5 million for each of the players, possibly selling some players. But we haven't seen anything yet. It's just all talk at this point, so we don't know what's going to happen until it happens, right? And so that's going to be another worry for us here. And the restart's going to happen. The new season's going to happen pretty quick, actually. The offseason is going to be much shorter than we originally had planned, but hey, nothing's wrong with that.
Brad, stay safe out there, man. Arizona is not doing well right now with 100%. The whole coronavirus situation. So,
all right, next to some of the juicy comments. Our buddy Holgner Messner, he's commented on both YouTube and here on Twitter. He says, I have to get one thing off my chest. It's finally over. Last season was horrible, and this season was horrible. Now Schalke is only hiring U18 players who are willing to play for pocket money of $2.5 million. In Great Britain, players get this money monthly. It's a bleak forecast for us, and I'm curious to see how this all pans out. I really want to look into the financial aspects of how much each of the players make, just to see what we may be losing. Jack, you got a feeling that some of the players that we have on our squad are making upwards well over $2.5 million.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be the next thing we have to focus on, right? Is who we retain and who we let go to try to adjust the wage picture for the club, which is obviously a significant worry at the moment. So we'll have to keep a close eye on that. I mean, the one thing I would say to Holger, I think, and I could be wrong about this, but I feel like I've seen him make comments sort of pro Clemens Toennies, and if he's upset about the imposition of a salary cap on the team, I find it curious that he isn't upset about the people that allowed us to get into the financial picture where that was necessary in the first place.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's more pro Clemens Toennies, but more don't react without having a backup plan, and don't just point your finger.
Well, that's a fair point then. Yeah,
and so if that's that take he's taken, then yeah, I agree with that, because it's not just him, it's other people involved, and I think on YouTube he may have extended that comments to make it more understandable than this 120 characters, whatever it is on Twitter. So
yeah,
but yeah, we've heard from him before, so keep up the comments. We love the comments. Next one is from Aman. He says, finally it's over and I can now focus on my final exams without wasting 90 minutes watching my favorite team get smashed. Yeah.
Stay in school. School's important. It's more important.
That's right.
That's more important than Schalke. That's for sure.
And we understand we're not doing exams, but we got to do a podcast on our team's getting smashed. So we're right there with you, man.
Yeah. How about this? How about you focus on your exams in the future, and then we'll let you know whether or not the match was worth watching afterwards. You can go back and watch it then when you have time for it. How about that? You
can actually go to our get some merchandise from us, and then have that with us. Quickly moving on. Next comment is from Adam Zeal. He says, I'm relieved that the Rückrunde from hell is over, but angst about the offseason. We just talked about that with Brad. The drama going into the club and whether we get relegated next year is going to be a fear for all of us. Until we start seeing what actually this game plan is going to be for the club and the players and everybody involved, we don't know. All we got to do is wonder, are we going to have more of the last couple of years and flirting with possible relegation or, mid-table to lower mid-table obscurity? It looks like it.
Yeah, it certainly seems likely. I would be surprised if we were able to finish significantly higher than we did this season. We have to wait and see the moves that Schneider's able to pull off. And hopefully he can work some magic and find something. But at the moment, I'm not optimistic that we're going to be going into next season with a squad any stronger than what we had this season.
Our buddy Leo says, do you guys think Boudjelab can have a role in the reformulation, or is it better to sell him? And then our buddies at Schalke UK said, he's a squad player for me. I guess it depends on what we want to do to strengthen in the summer. And then Schalke.
I wouldn't target Boudjelab as somebody to sell to try to help the financial situation, just because I don't think a player that young with that limited experience is going to demand. Yeah, it's going to demand a transfer fee. I think if you're going to talk about moving on from people that can potentially bring in some cash, I think you're talking about a Weston McKennie, a Suat Serdar, Amin Harit, those type of guys. Not that I want to see any of those three players move on, but I mean, I think if you're going to look to sell people, you'd have to look at the people that could actually make a significant financial impact. And I would be surprised if Boudjelab was that guy.
Yeah, I agree. And how about just playing players in their position, right? Instead of having Kutucu and Matondo and Boudjelab playing striker, maybe they play their wings with their expected player or shadow strikers, and get a striker that's that can put the ball in the back of the net. I don't know. That's just me, but
while we're on the subject of Kutucu real quick, I just want to reiterate this because I feel like every once in a while I need to jump in and just kind of make sure everyone's on the same page. The free Kutucu thing is largely a meme. Like there's some legitimate feelings behind it, in the sense that stop playing Guido Bergstaller, who hasn't scored in 18 months, and play somebody who looks more lively in front of goal and has demonstrated the ability to score goals. That's a legitimate frustration in the background behind that. But obviously it's not entirely serious, and it's not intended to be viewed as a end-all be-all solution. Like if only we played Kutucu, we would suddenly start winning matches. That's never what it's been. So if that gets lost in translation sometimes because of how prevalent it is, I apologize, but just know that it's tongue-in-cheek. It's supposed to be tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, and the movement is growing because more and more people, more bigger name people, are picking up on it, and it's getting mentioned on the air and by reporters everywhere. But it's a meme that it's kind of like Jack said, start playing some people that can actually contribute to the team, and it's not just Kutucu, it's other people like him. Get them out there and give them opportunities. Some guys who have more passion, who can contribute to the team, make it more offensive. That's what we're looking for. That's the whole point of this whole thing.
Yeah.
All right. Next question comes from Dirk Yannick. He says, yes, the press conference was something else, huh? Yes, it was. Not sure if I like the new commitment to mediocrity. I agree, but I mean, what are you going to do?
Commitment to mediocrity. I like the way that's worded.
It was nicely worded. But consider the financial situation that we're in. I don't know if we have any other choice. And we kind of talked about this in this podcast. He says, how many good players are going to leave? And we can get to that now. And then not that we had many left in the first place, but there are rumors that already Weston is going to be sold. Let's talk about Weston. Rumors are circulating today that you brought it up. What was it? Hamburg, Berlin. He maybe gets sold to Berlin, and I think that's very unlikely. Like you said,
yeah,
Premier League's more likely to be the destination for him as opposed to somewhere else in the Bundesliga. But you never know, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if Schalke want to get rid of him because they need the money, I understand that. If Weston McKennie wants to leave because he's tired of being here, I understand that as well. Because he's been played in so many positions, and he hasn't been put in a good position, I think, to really grow and succeed as a player. I mean, he's gotten a lot of match minutes, which is one thing, which is good for a young player, but just the variance of what he's asked to do on a week basis is not conducive to him really settling down and becoming, it's a jack of all trades, master of none type situation for him. So, yeah, and I can't hold it against him, for how often he's selected to constantly beating his head against the wall with loss after loss after loss. That's not fun. And if he wants to change the scenery, I can't blame him for that. And there's going to be plenty of fans on Schalke Twitter who would be very happy about that move. I'm not one of them because I think he's gotten some undue criticism and has been scapegoated to some extent in the squad by virtue of him being an American. But yeah, I mean, the financial situation is the financial situation. It's not going to help us improve our table position by getting rid of some of these people, but if we got to do it, we got to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I do think the Premier League is the more likely destination for him. Or at least, like I said, I just can't imagine that he would be like, yeah, I'll just go from Schalke to Hertha, or I'll go from Schalke to Hoffenheim, or I'll go. I don't see why he would make that specific move. I think he'd have to have a more a table closer to the a team closer to the top of the table, I should say, coming after him, or he would probably be going to a different league, I would think.
Yeah. We kind of alluded to it earlier. Daniel Caligiuri, he's going to Augsburg. He was sold to them. 3-year deal there. Best of luck to him there. But yeah, he's no longer going to be with the club.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't see the best of Daniel Caligiuri this season, but was a very important player for us for pretty much his entire tenure here. It's a move that I was wrong about, in my opinion. I wasn't particularly high on it when we made that, and he performed. He exceeded my expectations, if I'm being honest, and had some big moments, particularly in the derbies, which is always going to endear yourself to your fans. So we will always, look back fondly on some of those, the cutback onto his left foot in the 4-4 against, Dortmund, the free kick he had, later in the subsequent match. Good stuff from him, and we appreciate, the servant that he was for the club, and wish him the best of luck at Augsburg.
100%. Greg Rich is going back. We knew that was happening. John Joe Kenny, he's going back. We knew that happening, but we had still held out a glimmer of hope, I guess, up until the whole the financial situation came to fruition or came clear. But he's gone.
He had some very nice things to say about the club, which I think we fully expected, because he was very complimentary of Schalke, from the very beginning that he was here. Once again, I know there's some fans out there that are going to be pleased to see him leave because they weren't happy with his performances down the stretch. I understand that. I personally like the guy a lot, just in terms of his character and who he is, and the fact that he always seemed to be in the right frame of mind and put in a shift, and I respected that, at least. So I appreciate him spending some time here, and wish him the best of luck going forward.
Yeah, another player that we thought was going to leave, but then he said he was going to stay, and we talked about this last podcast because he came out and said, "Oh, I'm going to stay at Schalke. I want to stay at Schalke and build. I like what was going on." And that's Juan Miranda. He's on the screen here. It was official today that he's going back to Barcelona. That's what we kind of thought all along, because he wasn't getting enough game time based on what Barcelona had demanded when we first got him. But then he made out those comments saying, I like really being at Schalke and I want to stay there. But then pulled the sheet from underneath us today, and he's going back to Barcelona. So him and Todibo, right?
Juan Miranda committed the foul that led to the free kick on the edge of the box.
He had two bad games.
Freiburg's second goal of the 4. So yet another defensive mistake from him. Bon voyage, sir. I'm not particularly disappointed to see him step away. I don't think he was up to it.
Yeah, I don't think he, at least the way we played him defensively, is not the way to go. I mean, if he's maybe attacking winger or something like that, maybe. But we never get to see him in that kind of role. And the times that he was in there, he did more harm than good, unfortunately. So who else?
Yeah, maybe more of a wing back in a back 5. I don't know if he's good enough 4 to be a left back. Yeah, like a left back in a back 4 with the defensive responsibilities.
Who else?
Too young, obviously, but
Right. Who else do we lose? I can't think of off the top of my head who we lose. I know who.
Todibo.
Yeah, Todibo's going back. Who else? I feel like there's at least one more.
I mean, there's talks right now about the Mark Uth move to Cologne being made permanent. It sounds like Schalke is trying to get Cordoba in a swap or something.
Yeah, Cologne came out and said, I saw this just before the podcast, they said they're not going to do that. And then
why would they?
Right, exactly. And then Schalke's like, well, you can still have Uth for 10 million euros. They're like, well, we'll loan him. They're like, we are not going to loan him. We want to sell him. So they're trying to get him off the books. So expect that to happen. Skripski is supposed to be where's he at? Wherever he's at, they want him.
Can we just talk real quick about how badly Hoffenheim has fleeced us recently? I mean, I know that we got Rudy from Bayern, but that's another former Hoffenheim product, Mark Uth. Just, I mean, any move that we seem to touch with players from that club is not going well for us recently.
I blame Nagelsmann. It really hasn't. So so he's going to be gone, or we're trying to get rid of him. Skripski, he's looking for a permanent move to wherever he's at right now. I can't name escapes me at the moment. But he's doing well there. Let's see. I know there are rumors about, we talk about Weston McKennie. There's rumors about Suat Serdar and Ozan Kabak.
That's the other one I should have mentioned. Yeah, he would be another player that you would imagine could command a decent transfer fee. So he seems likely to be somebody else that would potentially be on the in the shop window.
Which is unfortunate, because we were hoping to see what him and Asane can do, and it's not going to happen. We don't know. But given what they've talked about with salary cap and all that good stuff, it looks like we could be losing some our more marquee players. I didn't hear anything about Harit, but you never know, I guess. So it's just a wait and see game. It's going to be fighting off these worries until we hear an official announcement of some sort. But yeah. I think that's all the players I can think of that either were rumored or gone. I'm sure we're missing some, but
yeah.
And they're talking about Stambouli still. It's still ongoing with that. Let's see. Paul Forrester on Facebook says who will be leaving the club. We just went over that. Who might be joining? So there was a rumor. There are a lot of rumors. The Freiburg goalie we're trying to negotiate for right now. Yeah. I don't know if that's going to happen, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his name because I don't want to embarrass myself even more than I already have tonight. But yeah, there's also right back, and the name escapes me as well. Who we're trying to get.
So as far as the goalkeeper rumor goes, and I may have spoken about this on last podcast, so this is redundant. I apologize, but obviously wouldn't be the first time. There was that $8 million fee that I think was associated with that move, and I just don't get that. You're paying $8 million for a backup 28-year-old goalkeeper, and I think if you're in the kind of financial situation that you're in, that money could better be used elsewhere on the pitch. I mean, you still have Schubert. I mean, we have Fairman potentially. I think we'd be able to get through the season with the people we have on our roster and invest that money elsewhere in the team rather than dropping nearly $10 million on, a goalkeeper who I'm just not particularly excited about, but that's me.
Yeah, no. I am too. I mean, he seems like a decent enough goalkeeper, but, like I said, there's Fairman still in the books. I don't want to give up on Schubert all the way. I know they're talking about Ulrich, trying to get him on a free possibly. So we'll see.
I'm not excited about that one either, but Bayern came out and said that they would potentially let him walk for free to not hinder any move that he's trying to make, which is a classy move by them, to be fair. So, respect to Bayern for that. So if we were able to get him on a free, that's fair. Yeah. If we were able to get him on a free, I wouldn't be against it, but yeah, it's not a move that's particularly inspiring, and I certainly wouldn't want to pay much money for him.
Yeah. I agree. He also says what current Schalke youth will be playing a role in the near future. We kind of talked about that already. Joseph Lacretus says I missed a game last week because I was working. Then I exactly. He says I later checked the score and unsurprisingly saw that we were gut punched for the millionth time. I'm happy the season is over. We all are. Changes must and will be made. I hope Benji Stambouli stays. I also hope we sign several new players. I want an action-packed offseason. Very unlikely with our financial situation, and on the bright side, it wasn't as bad as last season. I guess so. It ended worse, but yeah, it's a little bit better. We had a nicer Hinrunde.
Yeah.
That's all the comments and questions. Anything else you want to chat about tonight, Jack, before we close on out?
No, yeah, we'll have our official kind of like end of season analysis pod coming out next week, probably. Would you say?
I think so. Yeah, it's episode 97. So close to 100.
So I mean, we already addressed a lot of stuff today. That deals with off season and everything. But so yeah, we'll look for that next week. We'll do our typical end of season awards and all that kind of stuff, and hopefully we'll have a guest on for that as well. Maybe Marie or somebody else.
Yeah. It'd be nice to have a guest or two on, and actually see some people for once, right? Now we're doing things over the TV waves or the YouTube waves, so maybe we can start seeing people. Anyway, that's beside the point. Let's wrap this one up. We've tortured ourselves enough with everything that's going on now with all the panic and worry. Again, go ahead. We have the merchandise that's available. Feel free to check it out. See if there's anything you like. Be supporting the podcast here. If you haven't done so yet, sign up for the Schalke US newsletter. Just simply put in your email address and you get them monthly. Keep tuning in each week. Well, at least one more week for this season and in the off season as well. But keep tuning in, and we'll bring you the latest from the Royal Blues as they break. We want to thank Schalke, Sports Buzzer, and other places. Our friends who've commented and left us questions. Thank you for all your contributions for the podcast today. If there's anything you want us to talk about, just let us know. Tweet us at SchalkeMerica on Twitter or Instagram. Lastly, we want to give a shout out to our good friends at NBC4 Nashville. Heard the coronavirus is also pretty bad down there as well. So it's all over the South, really. It's just really bad here in the States still. But that aside, Jack, where can our followers find you on social media?
At JM Mangan, JMMANGAN on Twitter.
Beautiful. As always, you can find me on at @R_KHARMAN. pretty much anywhere that Twitter, Facebook, all that social media stuff. And if you guys don't know already, we are obviously streaming on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and a bunch of streaming services. But we are now on iHeartRadio, so definitely go there and check us out. If you like to listen to iHeartRadio, we're there now, so we're making our way around, Jack. We're going around. We're getting around.
Love to see that.
All right, folks. Until the next episode comes, the season end pod. We'll catch you then, and if any other breaking news comes, we'll be ready for that in the next pod as well. So until then, tschüss.